Do you believe in life after death? What if we told you there are real, documented cases that seem to prove it? Cases so disturbing that mainstream science refuses to acknowledge them. These are forbidden proofs, hidden from public discussion for decades. And if you believe everything has a logical explanation, we're very curious to hear how you'll explain these 15 mysterious cases. Let's begin with the first one, because this alone may change how you understand life and death forever. Number 15. The terrifying radio transmission from beyond the grave. The following case we present to you actually happened. It remains one of the most shocking and unsettling events in American history, viewed by many as undeniable proof of the existence of a soul and life after death. Tony Joe Henry, a remarkable and tragic figure, was executed on November 28, 1942, in the state of Louisiana, in the most brutal manner imaginable. She became the first woman to die in the electric chair in that state. Her life and gruesome death attracted major media attention across the nation. But the story did not end there. On the contrary, it took a mysterious and deeply eerie turn that has never been explained. Tony Joe Henry, born Annie Beatrice McQuiston, grew up under extremely difficult conditions. She lost her mother at a young age. She quickly slipped into a troubled life on the streets. Her existence changed dramatically when she met and later married the dangerous criminal Claude Henry. Her relationship with Claude played a decisive role in her fate. It ultimately led to the events that resulted in her arrest and execution. Tony Joe Henry and her husband Claude planned a robbery together to obtain money. On Valentine's Day, 1940, they stopped the Texas car dealer Joseph P. Calloway and kidnapped him at gunpoint. They forced him to drive them to a remote field. There, Tony Joe allegedly shot Calloway in cold blood. She was arrested shortly afterward, put on trial, and sentenced to death in the electric chair for first-degree murder. Claude Henry was also arrested, but his fate differed from his wife's. He was not convicted for the murder of Joseph Calloway, but for other crimes. He died in 1945 at the age of 32 from tuberculosis while imprisoned. On November 28, 1942, the day of her execution, Tony Joe Henry displayed remarkable calm and dignity that astonished everyone present. She did not plead for her life as guards led her into the prison's execution chamber. What struck witnesses most was this: she remained completely composed. She showed no signs of panic or fear. Before her execution, she said a prayer and appeared entirely at peace. Her final moving words expressed remorse and a desire for forgiveness. The execution was carried out and proceeded without incident. But the real mystery began afterward. Shortly after Tony Joe's death, extremely strange events occurred near the prison. A small local radio station, only a few miles away, experienced a chilling disturbance that no one could explain. One night, when the station was supposed to be broadcasting only static noise during off hours, a woman's voice suddenly came through the speakers. What could be heard was a sorrowful voice claiming to be Tony Joe Henry herself. What made this event so mysterious? There were no recordings of Tony Joe's voice in existence. None. Anywhere. The radio hosts and technicians were stunned. They were completely unable to find any explanation for this eerie phenomenon. The voice truly seemed to be Tony Joe Henry's. It was clear. It was unmistakable. Her message sent chills down the spines of listeners throughout the region. She spoke about her gruesome execution. She spoke about the injustice she felt she had suffered. She asked for forgiveness for her terrible actions. The local community was deeply shaken by this unexplainable event. Some people firmly believed that Tony Joe Henry was trying to make contact from the afterlife. They interpreted the radio signals as a supernatural sign that her soul had not found peace, and that she was seeking redemption from beyond the grave. Others were more skeptical. They searched desperately for logical explanations for the mysterious phenomenon. But no one could find a convincing answer. The fact remains: the voice heard on the radio after Tony Joe Henry's death could not have been a recording. Further investigations revealed that absolutely no recordings of her voice existed that the station could have broadcast. So was it really Tony Joe Henry trying to reach out after her death? Is there truly such a thing as a soul that continues to exist after the physical body dies? Could the dead really communicate with the living through radio waves? These questions have haunted researchers for over 80 years. Who knows? Perhaps Toni Jo Henry herself is the only one with the answers. Number 14. The impossible message from September 11th. The following story is both deeply moving and profoundly mysterious at the same time. It seems to prove that death is not the end of our existence. After the death of her husband in one of history's greatest tragedies, a woman suddenly found a message on a piece of paper, a message that seemed to come directly from the afterlife. Bonnie McInerney, whose husband Eamon lost his life in the tragic attacks of September 11, 2001, experienced several mysterious incidents that she interpreted as undeniable signs from her deceased husband. Eamon was in the North Tower of the World Trade Center on that fateful morning. He worked as a financial executive on one of the upper floors. He was in his office when the plane struck the tower and the devastating events unfolded. Eamon was one of the nearly 3,000 innocent people who lost their lives in this tragic attack. Bonnie recorded her experiences and beliefs in her fascinating book. She describes dreams, visions, and other unusual events she experienced after her husband's death. These dreams were extraordinarily vivid. They gave her the strange and powerful feeling that Eamon was still with her somehow. In some of these dreams, he seemed to comfort her. He assured her that he was fine, that he was at peace. These nighttime encounters gave Bonnie hope and strength to cope with the immense pain of losing her soulmate. But the dreams were only the beginning. In addition to these visions, Bonnie also described various signs that she interpreted as messages from her husband. She talked about certain objects that suddenly appeared in unexpected places. She spoke of unusual events that she believed were attempts by Eamon to communicate with her from wherever he now existed. These signs were proof to Bonnie. Her connection to Eamon continued to exist even beyond death itself. One particularly powerful incident changed everything. Bonnie received a direct message that she considered clear proof of her husband's continued existence. One day, she found a note in her home with the words, "Listen to your heart." This was a phrase her husband Eamon often said to her. It held deep personal meaning for them both. These words were a kind of mantra. Eamon used them to encourage Bonnie to trust her inner voice and follow her instincts. This note appeared in an inexplicable way. It was overwhelming for Bonnie. It confirmed her belief that Eamon was still with her somehow. It seemed as if Eamon wanted to send her a message from the afterlife, to comfort her, to show her that there is life after death. Bonnie said something remarkable. It is impossible for this message to have come from anyone else. Why? Because Eamon only said those words to her when they were completely alone. No one else knew this phrase. The sudden appearance of this note was extremely puzzling. Here is what happened. Bonnie found the mysterious note lying on the kitchen table in her home. She had been sitting in the kitchen thinking about her husband. She left the room for a brief moment. When she returned, she found this note lying on the table. At this moment, Bonnie was entirely alone. There was no one else in the house, no open windows, no explanation. Was it truly Eamon himself who wrote this message? Is there really life after death? Can our loved ones reach out to us from beyond the grave? A very touching story indeed. A beautiful thought. Before we continue, a quick question for you. Do you believe that we actually continue to exist after death? Just write yes or no down in the comments. We are really excited to see your answers. Subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. It is completely free and helps us continue creating videos like this one. Thank you so much for your support. Number 13. The secret code that proved life after death. Imagine you made a secret message or sign with someone close to you, something only the two of you would ever know. You agree that whoever dies first will deliver this message to the one who is still alive. Proof that consciousness continues beyond death. And now imagine this. That person eventually dies, and you actually receive that secret message afterward. Would you then believe in life after death? That is exactly what happened to a woman who received a secret code after the death of her husband, a code they had agreed upon together before he passed. Harry Houdini, born on March 24, 1874 in Budapest, Hungary, was a celebrated illusionist and escape artist known throughout the world. He became famous for his astonishing escape acts. He freed himself from handcuffs, locked crates, and even water-filled containers while audiences watched in amazement. Despite his skepticism towards supernatural phenomena and his famous crusade against fraudulent mediums, he made his wife Bess a promise. He would send her a sign after his death. If it were at all possible, Bess and Harry Houdini were determined to uncover the truth about the afterlife together. They wanted to provide undeniable proof that life after death truly exists. For this reason, Harry Houdini and his wife Bess agreed on a special code before his death. This code consisted of 2 specific words that only the 2 of them knew. Rosabelle believe. The word Rosabelle was the title of a song Bess loved. It held special meaning for both of them from their courtship days. The word believe served to complete the message. It symbolized faith in the afterlife and the possibility of communication beyond death. The code served as a method of absolute identification. If Bess were to receive a message after Houdini's death containing those exact 2 words, she could be completely certain. The message truly came from her husband Harry. It was not the work of an imposter or fraudulent medium. After Houdini's tragic death on October 31st, 1926, caused by a ruptured appendix resulting from a blow to the stomach, Bess repeatedly tried to contact him. She attended séance after séance, year after year. Then something remarkable happened. Bess reported that she actually received the code, Rosabelle believe. During a séance, a medium delivered a message to her containing the exact code she and her husband had agreed upon before his death. Bess interpreted this as a clear and undeniable sign from Houdini from the afterlife. She was completely shocked, overwhelmed. From that moment on, Bess was more convinced than ever. Life after death exists. Her beloved Harry had kept his promise to her. Despite this proof she felt she had received, Bess continued holding séances every year on her husband's death anniversary. She hoped to receive further signs from him. After 10 years, she ended the annual séances. She no longer experienced any clear contact with Harry. But here is something fascinating to consider. Some researchers believe that after death, a person first enters a kind of intermediate realm. In this realm, communication with the living is still possible for a limited time. But once the soul must move on or is reborn into a new existence, contact with the physical world becomes impossible. This could explain why Bess received a sign shortly after Houdini's death and never again afterward. Perhaps the people who have already left us have long since been reborn. They may even be close to us right now, without us realizing it. The story of Bess and Harry Houdini is truly fascinating. It certainly gives you something to think about. It shows us that there is far more between heaven and earth than we humans can understand. Is this case the proof of life after death we have been seeking? Do we truly continue to exist after physical death? Can we even be reborn into new bodies? Who knows? Number 12. The 35 phone calls from a dead man. Charles Peck, a 58-year-old man, died in a tragic train accident in California on September 12, 2008. A passenger train collided head-on with a freight train. The passenger train engineer had overlooked a red signal. The violent collision resulted in an accident that killed 25 people and injured more than 135 others. It was one of the worst train disasters in California's history. The death of Charles Peck left deep wounds in the hearts of his fiancée, his family, and his friends. But what happened after his death was just as chilling as it was mysterious. It left everyone involved with many unanswered questions. After the accident, something impossible began to happen. Charles's fiancée received a phone call. Then his parents received one. Then his brother. Then his stepmother. Over a period of 11 hours, they received a total of 35 phone calls, all from Charles's cell phone, all coming from somewhere within the wreckage of the train. These calls made the family hope desperately. Charles might still be alive. He might be trapped in the twisted metal, trying to reach them. Every time they answered the calls, however, they heard only static noise. No voice, no words. Just a faint and unsettling hiss that seemed to come from somewhere beyond comprehension. The family and rescue teams tried desperately to trace the source of the calls. They hoped to find Charles alive. But when the rescue teams finally discovered Charles in the wreckage of the train, he had already passed away. Medical examiners later confirmed something chilling. He had died on impact. But the story did not end there. What was also extremely strange was this. His cell phone, the one the calls were made from, was never found. Despite an intensive search through every piece of debris, every corner of the wreckage, the phone had simply vanished. One might assume that once Charles Peck's body was discovered, the mysterious calls would stop. But that was not the case at all. His relatives reported something deeply unsettling. They continued receiving calls from his cell phone several days after his death, long after his body had been recovered and identified. How is this possible? How can a dead man make phone calls? How can a phone that was never found continue to transmit? Charles Peck's fiancée is convinced of one thing. The calls were a sign from Charles, as if he wanted to let them know that he was still with them, even though he was no longer alive. It was as if he were trying to make contact one last time with his family, to say goodbye before leaving this world for good. Technical experts and investigators examined the case thoroughly. They could not find any logical explanation for how the calls were made. The extremely strange fact that Charles Peck's phone was never found adds to the mystery of this event. So was it really Charles himself trying to reach his family from somewhere beyond death? Was he caught between two worlds? Could technology somehow bridge the gap between the living and the dead? A fascinating and deeply unsettling thought. Number 11. The Voice on the Answering Machine. Doreen Virtue, a well-known spiritual author, experienced a particularly mysterious and moving incident after the death of her father. An incident that deeply touched her. An incident that strengthened her beliefs about life after death forever. Shortly after her father's death, Doreen received a puzzling message on her answering machine, a message that defied all explanation. When she played back the message, she mainly heard static noise, but embedded within that noise, she could clearly hear something else, the faint yet recognizable voice of her deceased father. He called her name, Doreen. In a familiar tone she recognized immediately, despite the interference. The message was short, but it left a deep impression on her. It seemed as if her father were desperately trying to reach her, trying to deliver one final message from wherever he now existed. The mixture of static noise and the faint voice gave her a strange impression. The message seemed to come from another level, another dimension entirely. The way her father's voice said her name brought her comfort. It brought her certainty. He continued to exist somewhere beyond physical death. Doreen interpreted this unusual message as a sign from her father from the afterlife. This experience strengthened her belief that the souls of deceased people continue to exist on a spiritual level. They are even capable of communicating with their loved ones through technology. Some researchers believe there may be a level of existence in which souls continue after physical death. They suggest that the soul of a person may even be indestructible. Why? The idea that the soul is immortal is based on a fundamental principle. The soul is made of energy, and like everything in the universe, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change its form. This perspective offers an interesting explanation. It helps us understand the mysterious messages many people receive from the deceased. Was the voice on the answering machine truly Doreen's deceased father? Was he reaching out across the veil between worlds? Is it really possible for the dead to use our technology to contact us? A comforting and very beautiful thought indeed. Number 10. The children who remember dying. Imagine something extraordinary. The life you are living right now is not your first. You may have already lived many lives, dozens, perhaps hundreds, but you can no longer remember them. One of the most fascinating proofs that death is not the end of our existence comes from an unexpected source. Children. These are not made-up fantasy stories. These are accounts of young children who report things that can be verified, things they could not possibly have known through normal means, things that leave researchers speechless. Reincarnation is the belief that an immortal soul exists, a soul that is reborn into a new body after physical death. This fascinating idea is widespread in many religions and cultures. Hinduism, Buddhism, several other spiritual traditions. The concept states that life is a cyclical process. The soul is born again and again. It learns, it grows, it evolves toward higher consciousness. There are numerous reports, mostly from young children, who can remember their past lives with astonishing accuracy. These memories often appear at a very young age, typically between ages 2 and 5. The children describe detailed places. They name specific people. They recall events they could not possibly know. And here is something remarkable. These memories often fade as the children grow older, as if a door slowly closes between this life and the previous one. Dr. Jim Tucker, a renowned psychiatrist and researcher at the University of Virginia, has extensively studied the phenomena of reincarnation. He uses rigorous scientific methods. He focuses on cases in the United States and around the world. He carefully documents every claim. He verifies every detail. One extremely remarkable case that Dr. Tucker examined is the case of Cameron Macaulay. Cameron was a young boy from Scotland. At the age of just 2, he began to speak of something strange, a past life on the island of Barra. Neither he nor his family had ever been there. They had never even heard of the place. Cameron described his former house in precise detail. He named his family members. He mentioned a white dog he had owned. His mother was puzzled. Dr. Tucker was intrigued. They decided to verify these statements. They traveled to Barra. What they discovered was astonishing. Every single detail matched an actual family that had lived on the island. The exact house Cameron had described. The white dog. Everything. Dr. Tucker stated something remarkable about this case. This is one of the most credible cases of reincarnation he has investigated in his long career. Cameron knew things he could not possibly have known. All the statements he made were thoroughly examined. They were incredibly proven to be true. But Cameron's case is not unique. Another very credible case that Dr. Tucker studied is the case of Ryan Hammonds. Ryan was a young boy from Oklahoma. As a toddler, he began to speak about his past life. He claimed he had worked in Hollywood during the golden age of cinema. He provided dozens of specific details about this previous existence. Then something extraordinary happened. Ryan identified a photograph. It showed a man named Marty Martin, a former movie extra who later became a talent agent. Ryan pointed at the photograph. He said that was him. That was who he used to be. Ryan recalled details about Martin's life that were not publicly documented anywhere. The number of children he had, details about his addresses, obscure facts that no one could have told him. Dr. Tucker was able to verify these facts through extensive research. The details matched perfectly. Dr. Tucker emphasized something important about these cases. The children's memories are too specific, too accurate. They cannot be dismissed as coincidence or imagination. He stated that it is essentially impossible to explain cases like Cameron Macaulay or Ryan Hammonds without seriously considering one possibility. Reincarnation is real. So does reincarnation truly exist? Is death not the end, but the beginning of a new life? Do we live again and again, learning lessons across centuries? A very fascinating thought to consider. Who knows? Perhaps you yourself have lived before. Number 9. The emails from a dead man. Jack Froese was a cheerful and humorous man. Everyone who knew him loved him. He died in June 2011 at the age of 32. A sudden heart attack. No one saw it coming. His early death left a painful void in the hearts of his friends and family. They struggled greatly to cope with the unexpected loss. But the story did not end there. Several months after Jack's death, something impossible began to happen. His friends and family members suddenly received messages from his email address, an address that should have been completely inactive. These messages were not just simple greetings. They contained specific information, private jokes, things that only Jack himself could have known. The incredible fact that these emails seemed to come from someone who had passed away caused great confusion, great astonishment. Everyone who received them was deeply shaken. One particularly remarkable example stands out. Jack's best friend Tim Hart received an email. The subject line read simply, "I'm watching." The message referred to a conversation they had shared shortly before Jack's death. In that private conversation, Jack had made a joke. He said he would always keep an eye on his friend, even if he were no longer around. This specific reference to a very personal discussion left Tim completely amazed. How could this be? Tim replied to the email. He asked who was really sending these messages. He explained that Jack was no longer alive. He never received a response. To solve this mystery, Jack's family hired cybersecurity specialists, experts who could determine the source of the emails. What they discovered made the case even more mysterious. The investigators confirmed something disturbing. The emails were definitely written and sent after the death of Jack Froese. They were not pre-written messages. They were not scheduled to send automatically. Jack's computer had not been used since his death. It had not even been turned on. So how were these emails sent? Who wrote them? Was it truly Jack himself? Reaching out from beyond the grave? Was he trying to let his loved ones know he was still watching over them? The mystery remains completely unsolved to this day. A chilling thought indeed. Number 8. The mirror that opens to the other side. Is it possible to use a mirror to make contact with the deceased? This exciting question is one that a renowned researcher explored intensively. His discoveries led him to develop a technique that he claims allows a connection to the afterlife to be established. Dr. Raymond Moody, a well-known researcher in the field of near-death experiences, developed a special method to communicate with the deceased. This method is based on ancient traditions that date back thousands of years. He called it the psychomanteum. The psychomanteum is a specially designed room. It contains a large mirror positioned at a specific angle. The mirror is arranged so that the person looking into it can relax comfortably. They enter a meditative state. The room is dimly lit. The atmosphere is calming, focused. The person gazes into the mirror for extended periods, and then something remarkable often happens. Mirror gazing is not a new practice. The ancient Greeks used it thousands of years ago. They called it katoptromancy. They believed these reflections could serve as portals, gateways through which they could communicate with gods, with spirits, with the deceased. The famous Oracle of Delphi used similar techniques. Priestesses gazed into reflective surfaces to receive divine revelations. The ancient Romans adopted these traditions. For them, mirrors were more than everyday objects. They were tools to connect with the afterlife, to receive messages from beyond. These ancient practices inspired Dr. Moody. He developed the psychomanteum as a modern therapeutic tool, a way for grieving people to find closure, to reconnect with those they had lost. Many people who have tried the psychomanteum report astonishing experiences. Some actually see images in the mirror, figures they identify as their deceased loved ones. Others hear voices. They feel a strong presence in the room. These experiences can be extremely intense, deeply moving. They change one's understanding of life and death forever. So is it truly possible to use a mirror to make contact with the deceased? Can reflective surfaces serve as windows to another dimension? Very fascinating indeed, perhaps even a bit eerie. Number 7. The ghost signals that started it all. Is it possible to use a radio to establish a connection to another dimension, or even the afterlife itself? That is exactly the intriguing question at the center of this case. Guglielmo Marconi invented the radio in 1895. He changed the world forever, but during his experiments, he made a series of mysterious discoveries that no one has been able to explain to this day. While working on developing and improving radio technology, Marconi encountered something strange, signals that he could not explain, signals that did not originate from any known transmitter. These signals were irregular. They did not appear to have a human source. Marconi himself was both fascinated and disturbed by these unexplainable receptions. It is claimed that Marconi received eerie voices, strange messages, whispers from somewhere unknown. He documented these puzzling incidents. He tried desperately to determine their origin. He never succeeded. Some believed the signals were caused by natural phenomena, atmospheric disturbances, cosmic background radiation, electromagnetic anomalies. But many were not satisfied with this explanation. They pointed out something crucial. These signals contained audible voices. Others speculated about something even more extraordinary. Perhaps the signals came from extraterrestrial civilizations, beings trying to make contact with Earth. Radio waves are considered an effective means of interstellar communication. Perhaps we were not alone in the universe. But the most fascinating theory suggests something else entirely. These signals could come from deceased souls, spirits trying to make contact with the living through radio waves. This theory gained popularity. It sparked intense discussions. Could radio waves truly create a bridge to the afterlife? There is a method called instrumental transcommunication. It uses electronic devices to receive messages from the deceased. Radios, televisions, computers. Some researchers are convinced these devices can serve as a bridge, a connection between our world and the world beyond. There are documented cases. People asked questions and recorded the moment with audio devices. When they played back the recordings, something chilling appeared. Strange voices whispering answers, even though no one else was present during the recording, even though the room was completely empty. Can the dead really use our technology to reach us? Are radio waves a bridge between dimensions? Who knows? Perhaps the answers are already being transmitted. We simply have not learned how to listen. Number 6. When déjà vu reveals past lives. Have you ever experienced something strange? That sudden feeling that you have already lived through a specific moment, even though you are absolutely certain you are experiencing it for the first time. You walk into a room. Everything feels familiar. You meet someone new. You feel like you have known them forever. You visit a foreign city. Somehow you know your way around. Such experiences are known as déjà vu. Scientists have tried to explain this phenomenon for decades. They speak of neurological glitches, memory misfires. But what if there is another explanation? What if déjà vu is actually a window into your past lives? Dolores Cannon explored this possibility. She was a highly respected hypnotherapist who gained worldwide recognition for her work. She specialized in regression therapy, a technique where people are guided under hypnosis back into their past lives. Through these sessions, her clients accessed memories of previous existences, memories with stunning detail. They described different historical eras, different cultures, places they had never visited in this life, people they had never met, yet they knew specific details that could later be verified. Dolores Cannon believed something fascinating about déjà vu. That feeling of having already experienced a situation could be connected to memories from past lives, memories that occasionally surface into conscious awareness, like ripples from a stone thrown into still water long ago. But she discovered something even more intriguing. Some of her clients had memories of parallel realities, alternative versions of their current lives, different choices, different outcomes. Parallel realities are concepts from quantum physics. These theories suggest that alongside our known reality, countless other realities exist. Every decision we make creates a new reality, a reality where a different outcome occurs. In a parallel reality, your life could be completely different. Different career, different location, different partner. Perhaps déjà vu is not a glitch at all. Perhaps it is a glimpse, a moment when the walls between lives become thin, when memories from who we once were briefly shine through. A fascinating thought indeed. Number 5. Is consciousness actually immortal? Is there a form of consciousness that continues to exist after death? What really happens to us when we die? These are the questions that 2 brilliant scientists studied in depth. What they discovered will definitely surprise you. Dr. Stuart Hameroff, a renowned physician and professor at the University of Arizona, explored how human consciousness actually works. Together with Sir Roger Penrose, a celebrated physicist and Nobel laureate, he developed a revolutionary theory, a theory that elevates our understanding of consciousness to an entirely new level. They believe something remarkable. Our consciousness exists on the quantum level, and it may continue to exist beyond physical death. What is the quantum level? It is the realm of the smallest particles, atoms, electrons. In this realm, particles behave in very strange ways. They can exist in multiple places simultaneously. They can be in several states at once, until someone observes them. Then they choose one state, one location. Hameroff and Penrose proposed something fascinating. Consciousness arises through special processes inside tiny structures in our brain cells. These structures are called microtubules. They function like microscopic quantum computers. An important part of their theory is quantum coherence. This means particles can exist in several states simultaneously until they are measured. Imagine a coin spinning in the air. It is both heads and tails at the same time, until it lands, until someone looks. Here is the profound implication. If our consciousness truly operates on the quantum level, something extraordinary follows. The information that makes up our personality might remain in the universe, even after our body dies. Our thoughts, our memories, our essence, all preserved in the quantum fabric of reality itself. This opens a fascinating possibility. What defines us as individuals does not disappear. It continues, in some form. Perhaps we are not our bodies at all. Perhaps we are patterns of information, immortal patterns that cannot be destroyed. Number 4. When consciousness leaves the body. Dr. Pim van Lommel, a renowned cardiologist and scientist from the Netherlands, extensively studied a profound question. Can consciousness exist independently of the brain? He conducted extensive research on patients who survived cardiac arrest. During cardiac arrest, the heart stops beating. Blood flow to the brain is interrupted. Brain activity ceases within seconds. In theory, consciousness should not be present during this time. The brain is not functioning. There should be nothing. Darkness. Silence. Nevertheless, many patients reported something extraordinary after being revived. Clear and detailed experiences. Experiences, they said, occurred during the time of their clinical death, when their brains showed no activity whatsoever. These near-death experiences often included remarkable elements. Out-of-body experiences where patients floated above their own bodies. They watched doctors working on them. They saw details they could not possibly have seen. Encounters with deceased relatives who had come to greet them. The perception of a brilliant light at the end of a tunnel. Feelings of overwhelming peace and love. Some individuals reported something even more astonishing. They knew things that happened in other locations while they were clinically dead. They described conversations that took place in waiting rooms, in hallways, in other parts of the hospital entirely. Details they could not possibly have known. Dr. Van Lommel's studies suggest something profound. Consciousness can exist even without brain activity, even when the brain has completely shut down. These findings challenge everything science assumes about the nature of consciousness itself. Because if consciousness can indeed exist independently of the physical body, then a remarkable conclusion follows. Consciousness may well continue after death. The brain may not create consciousness at all. It may simply receive it, like a television receiving a broadcast signal. So is death perhaps not the end? Is it the beginning of something entirely new? Something we cannot yet imagine. A very fascinating thought to consider. Number 3, the girl who fell from the sky. Do you believe in miracles? If not, you will definitely change your mind after the following story. This case is almost impossible to believe, yet it truly happened. A 17-year-old fell from about 3,000 meters out of a plane, straight into the jungle, and she survived. Juliane Kopske was a German teenager. On December 24th, 1971, she became the sole survivor of the crash of LANSA Flight 508 in the Peruvian jungle. The plane was traveling from Lima to Pucallpa. It entered a severe thunderstorm. Lightning struck the aircraft. The plane broke apart in midair. Juliane was still strapped into her seat. She fell approximately 3,000 meters through the air, through the clouds, through the rain, into the dense jungle canopy below. In a miraculous way, she survived the fall. She had only minor injuries. Meanwhile, all 91 other passengers and crew perished. Every single one, except her. But the story did not end there. Juliane's mother, Maria, was also on board the plane. Unfortunately, Maria did not survive the crash. Juliane would later find her mother's body in the jungle. A devastating discovery for a 17-year-old girl alone in the wilderness. When Juliane's father, Hans Wilhelm, learned about the tragedy, he was deeply shocked. In his desperation, he did something remarkable. He tried to establish mental contact with his daughter. He focused intensely. He sent his thoughts to her. He concentrated all his energy on reaching her mind across the vast distance. Injured and alone in the dangerous jungle, Juliane began her 11-day journey searching for help. She faced venomous snakes, crocodiles, insects that laid eggs in her wounds, starvation, dehydration. The odds of survival were essentially zero. Yet during this time, something strange happened. Juliane was accompanied by a deep feeling of guidance, a presence she attributed to her father. She repeatedly reported moments when she was convinced her father was communicating with her, giving her hints, helping her survive, showing her the right path. Her father had taught her many survival skills. He was a biologist. He had spent years in the jungle, and now, somehow, his knowledge seemed to flow into her mind. Follow rivers, the voice told her. Rivers lead to people. This guidance helped her find direction through the dense, trackless jungle. After 11 days of impossible survival, Juliane discovered a hut. It belonged to lumber workers. They eventually rescued her. They brought her to the nearest town. She was saved. The mystical connection to her father may have enabled her survival. It gave her story a deeper meaning, a meaning about consciousness transcending physical distance, about love reaching across space itself. Was Hans Wilhelm truly communicating with his daughter? Can consciousness extend beyond the body? Can the bond between parent and child transcend physical limitations? Perhaps love itself is a force we do not yet understand. Who knows? Number 2. The butterflies and white feathers. Elisabeth Kubler-Ross was a Swiss-American psychiatrist. She became a pioneer in the study of death and dying. Her groundbreaking research changed how the world understands the final journey we all must take. In her work, she documented numerous cases in which dying individuals and their loved ones received signs, messages from the deceased, symbols that seemed to come from beyond the veil. One particularly recurring symbol appeared again and again in these accounts: the butterfly. The butterfly is often interpreted as a symbol of transformation, of metamorphosis, of the continued existence of the soul. Think about it. The caterpillar appears to die inside its cocoon. It dissolves completely. Yet from that apparent death, something beautiful emerges, something that can fly. In Greek mythology, the word psyche means both soul and butterfly. The Greeks understood something profound. Death is not an ending. It is a transformation. In addition to butterflies, there are countless reports of another phenomenon: people finding white feathers in unusual places after the death of a loved one. On a pillow, on a car seat, in the middle of a room with no open windows. These feathers appear when they are needed most. During moments of grief, during times of doubt, these feathers are often interpreted as signs that the deceased is somehow nearby, watching over their loved ones. White feathers symbolize purity, protection, spiritual presence. Their unexpected appearance brings comfort, reassurance that we are not alone. Elisabeth Kubler-Ross discovered something else remarkable. People who were close to physical death often reported seeing visitors, deceased relatives standing at the foot of their beds, loved ones who had passed years before, coming to greet them, coming to guide them to whatever comes next. It appeared as though these beings were waiting, ready to accompany the dying person in the transition from this world to the next, from this life to whatever follows. Kubler-Ross found something deeply moving about these moments. At the point of death, all fears vanished, all doubts disappeared. Even people who had spent their lives terrified of dying became calm, peaceful, serene. Something in those final moments brought them comfort beyond explanation. Many people who had near-death experiences and returned reported the same thing. There is nothing to fear. Death is not an ending. It is a doorway. And on the other side, those who love us are waiting. So, are butterflies and white feathers truly signs from the deceased? Are they messages from the afterlife? Are our loved ones really watching over us? Perhaps they are trying to tell us something. Perhaps they want us to know that death is not goodbye. It is simply see you later. A wonderful thought. Imagining that we will see our loved ones again after we die. That the connections we forge in this life continue forever. Number 1, the miracle of final clarity. Michael Nahm, an experienced researcher from Germany, has studied a fascinating phenomenon. A phenomenon that may be the most compelling evidence of all. Patients showing unexpected clarity and mental alertness shortly before their death. This phenomenon appears in people who have suffered for years from dementia, from Alzheimer's disease, from severe cognitive impairments that destroyed their memories, their personalities, their ability to recognize their own families. And then something impossible happens. Shortly before death, these patients suddenly wake up. They become lucid, alert, themselves again. After years of confusion and darkness, the person they once were returns. For a few precious hours, sometimes just minutes, they speak clearly. They remember everything. They recognize everyone. They say goodbye. This phenomenon is called terminal lucidity, and it defies everything we think we know about the brain. Dementia is a devastating condition. It affects the brain progressively. It destroys neurons. It erases memories. It strips away personality. People with severe dementia cannot remember. They cannot think clearly. They cannot recognize their own children. The damage to their brains is physical, measurable, irreversible. Or so we thought. Nam's studies document numerous cases. Patients who had not spoken coherently for years suddenly engaged in meaningful conversations. They recalled details from their entire lives. They recognized family members they had not acknowledged in a decade. They expressed love. They asked for forgiveness. They said goodbye. One remarkable example haunts researchers to this day. An elderly woman had suffered from severe dementia for many years. She could not communicate. She did not recognize her own daughter. She existed in a fog of confusion. Then, shortly before her death, everything changed. She spoke clearly. She recalled details from her childhood, from her wedding day, from the births of her children. She recognized every person in the room. She thanked them for their love. She told them not to be sad. And then she passed peacefully. How is this possible? How can a severely damaged brain suddenly function perfectly? The neurons are destroyed. The physical structures are gone. Yet the person returns. Perhaps the answer lies in what we have been exploring throughout this journey. Perhaps consciousness is not produced by the brain at all. Perhaps the brain is merely a receiver, a filter. And when that filter begins to fail at the moment of death, consciousness shines through more clearly than ever. Perhaps terminal lucidity occurs because the soul is preparing to leave. It is detaching from the damaged body. And in that detachment, the limitations fall away. The confusion clears. The true self, which was always there, finally emerges one last time. Nam's research suggests something profound. Consciousness may not be bound to the physical structures of the brain. These observations support an extraordinary idea. Consciousness may have an independent existence, an immortal form, even though we do not know with certainty what will happen after death. There are many compelling indications. The death of the body is likely not the end of our existence. Perhaps we are, in truth, immortal beings, temporarily inhabiting physical forms, learning, growing, evolving. Before returning home, now we look forward to hearing your personal thoughts on this. Is there life after death? Do you believe in the existence of an immortal soul? Which case fascinated you the most? Which one made you question everything you thought you knew? Feel free to share your thoughts below in the comments. We read every single one. And who knows? Perhaps your own story belongs among these forbidden proofs. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the unknown. And we will see you next time.